A new report says that new Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith is not a big fan of Justin Fields and does not want the team to trade for him during this offseason. I'll react to that rumor on today's edition of Steelers Talk, as well as some other rumors, including Kirk Cousins being named the #1 destination for the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason, and then also another rumor from Jerry Dulac, of all people, that Dan Moore Jr. is going to be the starting left tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers next season. So before we get into today's rumors, make sure you guys click that subscribe button for me right now for the latest Steelers news updates all throughout the 2024 offseason, every time they make a trade, every time they sign a free agent, every time they restructure a contract. We are going to have you covered with a breaking news video right here on the channel. So without further ado, let's get into today's show. So let's start with what Steve Wyche had to say. He works for NFL Network, and he doesn't think Justin Fields is going to be traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers because new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith isn't particularly a big fan of him. This is what he has to say. This conversation about the Steelers continues to intrigue me because Arthur Smith, when he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, he wanted no part of Justin Fields. He had the possibility to draft him, and they took Kyle Pitts. Why now, all of a sudden, would the head coach who designed the offense taking a liking to Justin Fields? That's why this conversation on the Steelers and Arthur Smith and how he'd be a perfect fit. Why? Arthur Smith didn't want him once. Why would he want him right now? I may be completely off base here, but I don't see it. So listen, I do think Wyche makes a couple of different good points here where it's like, you know, if Arthur Smith really liked Justin Fields all that much and he thought he'd be a good fit in his offense, he had the opportunity to take him in the top 5 his first year in Atlanta. So the big question surrounding this report and what Steelers fans need to know is if Smith passed on Justin Fields back in 2021, his first year at the Falcons, why would they want him now? So there's a couple of explanations that could explain why he might be okay with Justin Fields now. The first explanation is that he really believed in Matt Ryan. He thought he was going to be his next Ryan Tannehill, and he was going to be able to resurrect his career, and he was just trying to get the best player available on the board to help his team do as well as it possibly could. Instead of drafting Fields to go behind Matt Ryan, I think he was more in a win now kind of mode at that point. As his first year as a head coach, he wanted to get off on the right start. And it's definitely possible that he went with Pitts over Fields because of that. The second explanation that could explain why he didn't take Fields is that he might not have been a big Fields fan back in 2021, but now maybe he sees the potential in his game, especially with the way that he has run the football over the last couple of years. When he was there in Atlanta, his last couple of years there with Desmond Ridder, he tried doing some of the quarterback run stuff that you're seeing around the league, and you saw with Justin Fields in Chicago, but Desmond Ridder just doesn't have the same juice as Justin Fields. If you can get Fields in his offense now, I think it's a really great fit because it's a QB-friendly system. It's a lot of deep shots down the field. Justin Fields has a great deep ball, and then he can implement that quarterback run game and have more success with it this time around because you have Justin Fields over Desmond Ridder. Now, where I'm at with this whole situation here is I'm not Arthur Smith. I'm not inside the Steelers building. I have not talked to the man. So I do not know what his feelings are on Justin Fields, okay? So I don't know if this report is true or not. But I know for a fact, at least in my mind, that if Justin Fields is the quarterback of the Steelers over Kenny Pickett, I think that is an upgrade, and I think the proof is in the pudding here when you look at the stats. So you look at the last 2 years when it comes to just pure touchdown numbers. Okay, Fields has started 4 more games than Kenny Pickett, 28-24, but he has 45 touchdowns, both passing and rushing, versus Kenny Pickett's 17. All right, so that's 28 more touchdowns with worse support, I would argue. Yes, he had DJ Moore that last year in Chicago, but in Pittsburgh, he would have had George Pickens. He would have Deontay Johnson. He would have Pat Freiermuth. And, you know, Luke Getsy wasn't a great offensive coordinator either there in Chicago. So he definitely didn't have the best support. And despite that, without George Pickens, without Deontay Johnson, without Pat Freiermuth, he had 28 more touchdowns than Kenny Pickett over the last 2 seasons, and that results in the points per game numbers here where you see the Bears were 18th in the league last year at 21.2. I mean, that is below average, but it's a lot better than what the Pittsburgh Steelers were at 28th overall at 17.9. And if I would say right now the Steelers got to 10 wins with, 18 points a game? If they would have had 21 points a game, you could definitely make an argument they would have won 12 or more games in 2023 if Justin Fields would have been their quarterback. And then also the red zone stats are also very interesting as well. And listen, man, the Steelers are just dog crap in the red zone, especially when Kenny Pickett is their quarterback. By the way, this number is even lower when Kenny Pickett is the quarterback. Mason Rudolph actually did a pretty decent job at the end of the year to spike this number right there in those last 3 weeks. But 25th in the league is just not very good. The Bears were 15th. So Justin Fields is somebody that gets teams into the end zone with his playmaking ability and his arm strength, and his rushing ability plays a huge part in the red zone. Getting teams into the end zone, that is Kenny Pickett's biggest flaw. And with Justin Fields, you can say whatever you want about his mental processing or all this different stuff or, the turnovers, but he gets teams into the end zone, and Kenny Pickett does not. Now, let me know down there in the comments section, how many games would the Steelers win next season if they trade for Justin Fields? Let me know down there in the comments section. We got 10 wins this year with Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky stinking it up and Mason Rudolph saving the day in the last 3 weeks. How many would we get with Justin Fields? Let me know for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. Now let's shift from Justin Fields to Kirk Cousins, another top quarterback target for the Pittsburgh Steelers among fans right now. And Sports Illustrated just named the Pittsburgh Steelers as the top destination for Kirk Cousins this offseason. This article was written by Gilberto Manzano from Sports Illustrated, and this is what he had to say. The Steelers need a proven QB, and they have plenty to offer Cousins with a talented group of skilled players and a coach in Mike Tomlin, who has had a winning season for 17 consecutive years. Outside of the 49ers, the Steelers make the most sense roster-wise, and they could make a serious financial offer. Pittsburgh's cap space issues aren't as dire as San Francisco's, since the Steelers can cut a handful of veteran players who aren't in the long-term plans. For example, the Steelers can cut wide receiver Allen Robinson to easily create $10 million in cap space. They're currently $13.8 million over the salary cap. Also, Cousins wouldn't have to do the heavy lifting in Pittsburgh, which tends to have dominant defenses thanks to the edge rusher T.J. Watt leading the charge. But it wouldn't be surprising to see Cousins light up the scoreboard with a group that includes tight end Pat Freiermuth, wide receivers George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, and running backs Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. The Steelers' offense has been stagnant with quarterback Kenny Pickett the past 2 seasons. So now coming up here, I'm going to give you guys my take on Kirk Cousins, whether or not I think it's a realistic possibility that he'll end up with the black and gold in 2024. But before we get into that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. Football season is officially over, but the fun on PrizePicks never stops as you can enhance your viewing experience for things like March Madness, NBA basketball, MLB, and even NASCAR with PrizePicks, which is a skill-based, real money, daily fantasy sports game. And if you're wondering how it works, here's how you play. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go for more or less than the PrizePicks projection. You can even win up to 25 times your money on any entry. This is my PrizePicks projection tonight for tonight's NBA action. I'm going to take the more on Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, and Luka Doncic tonight, and I'm going to take the less on Kevin Durant. You can check it out now and get your prize picks in before tonight's games by going to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. At PrizePicks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, they're just looking to take advantage of you. With PrizePicks, it takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks. To get started right now, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. That's code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS for a deposit match up to $100 today. So the way that I feel about Kirk Cousins is that I think Cousins probably wants to come to Pittsburgh for all the reasons that Sports Illustrated laid out. I mean, they got a great head coach, great defense, good weapons to work with, a new offensive coordinator whose offense fits with Kirk Cousins' skill set really well. But I just don't know if it makes sense for the Steelers from a financial standpoint. Now, he did say, you could cut Allen Robinson, you could cut Mason Cole, you can cut some veterans, but you're not going to create $30 million in cap space. And even if you do, it's going to create problems filling the rest of the holes on this roster. He's expected to make 3-year contract, $30 million per season, at a minimum, okay? So it could get up to 40, 45 million, all right? The reports vary, but at the very least, you have to get $30 million in additional cap space for 2024. And I'm just not sure if the Pittsburgh Steelers have that. And if your plan is to go get a veteran quarterback, why not go with the cheaper option in Russell Wilson, who is a more accurate passer than Kirk last year, higher on target percentage, was more efficient, had a higher touchdown percentage. All right, his big-time throw percentage was way higher than Kirk's. Kirk's big-time throw percentage was 33rd among passers with at least 200 pass attempts last year. Russell Wilson was in the top 10. Interception percentage and quarterback rating are around the same range as well. So listen, I'm looking at the price tags right now between Russell Wilson, somebody that's been to a Super Bowl, is a Super Bowl champion, and you can get him for a $1.2 million contract because of an offset clause with his deal in Denver, versus Kirk Cousins, a guy that has never won a Super Bowl in his career, for $30 million. I mean, they're both 35 years old. You can't say sign Kirk because he's younger. I mean, if they're both 35, they're both playing pretty darn good football, and Russ has the advantage in terms of clutch factor and playoff experience. Why not take the cheaper option? I think he is the clear vet option if the Steelers want to go get a veteran for the short term. And then Justin Fields is probably the option if you're looking to get a younger quarterback for the long term. But really, I'm just not sure if Kirk Cousins works, because if you pay him that $30 million+ contract per season, I mean, how are you going to fill the rest of the holes on your roster? You still need another starting outside corner. You still need another nickel corner to start. You need potentially a safety if they cut Patrick Peterson. You're going to need 2 more members of your offensive line to start next year. You need another offensive tackle and another offensive center. So how are you just going to address all these in the draft? I mean, good luck doing that, finding starters for all of these positions in the draft. If you sign Kirk Cousins, there's going to be some sort of major hole on your team, either offensively or defensively, whereas if you get Russell Wilson, you can address all of these things in free agency because you're saving that $30 million you would be otherwise spending on Kirk Cousins. Now let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Pick one for me. Type KC for Kirk Cousins at $30 million per season, or RW for Russell Wilson on the vet minimum. Which one would you rather have? Let me know down there in the comments section, Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson. So last topic on today's Rumors Roundup here. Once again, Jerry Dulac is back in the news, and this might be his worst report yet, all right? As he says the Steelers are currently planning to have Dan Moore Jr. return as the starting left tackle for their team in 2024. And let me just tell you guys, there is no way the Pittsburgh Steelers should bring back Dan Moore Jr. for another season as the starting left tackle. And he says in his report, oh, he's been the starting left tackle since he got drafted, and all this different stuff. And like, how many guys have done that? Well, not many guys have been as bad as Dan Moore Jr. as a starting left tackle either. You take a look at the stats from last year, 63rd overall offensive tackle in football last year. That's not necessarily like awful. Like, I think that's swing tackle level right there. But is that like bona fide franchise left tackle? No way, especially when you look at the pass blocking grade, 42.1. That was 78th out of 81 offensive tackles that got graded by Pro Football Focus last year. He allowed the most sacks, the most hurries, and the most pressures on the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line last year. It's time to move on, okay? Do not start Dan Moore Jr. Pittsburgh, I beg of you, please do not make this move. And I think that if you want to keep him as like a swing tackle that has experience in the league, can play on either side of the line, fine, keep him. All right, he's a very cheap option as a swing tackle. I'm actually in favor of that. But you cannot trot out Dan Moore Jr. as your starting left tackle once again when you have an opportunity to replace him this offseason with either a veteran free agent or to get another really good draft prospect early in the 2024 NFL draft. And listen, man, when it comes to Jerry Dulac, I mean, this guy is such a sucker, man. This guy, number one, he takes the bait that the Pittsburgh Steelers feed him all the time, all right? It's clear that he's reporting these things, and they're clear smoke screens. You really think the Steelers are going to trot out one of the worst left tackles in football last year once again to be their starting tackle? No way, but the Steelers probably told him that, and like a sucker, he just pushes it out there. It's just ridiculous, man. And then also, another thing that Dulac does that I'm not a big fan of is that he gives his opinions and he presents it as insider information. Remember when this guy said there was no way the Steelers were gonna re-sign Myles Jack, and then the next day they re-signed him? I mean, this guy is the worst reporter in the Pittsburgh area, and for some reason, he has all the recognition, all the name recognition you could think of. He has all the respect from all the big outlets. I don't understand it with how much this guy gets it wrong. And because of that, that report that he had on the quarterback situation probably should be taken with a grain of salt as well. Now, let me know down there in the comments section, is Jerry Dulac from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette a reliable source, or do you think he's full of it? Type yes or no for me down there in the comments section to let me know how you feel about Dulac's reporting. That'll be it for today's show, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with me here to the very end of the show. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button right now for extensive Steelers coverage all throughout the 2024 offseason.